What's a fact that sounds fake but is actually legit? Oxford University was founded before the Aztec Empire. The entire state of Wyoming only has 2 escalators. Doesn't it only have one area code too? Yep. A few of my less interesting neighbors have 307 bumper stickers too. Pineapples take about 2 years to grow. Nintendo was founded in 1889. They also were originally founded as a playing card company. Most people don't really realize either fact. At its furthest away point, you can fit every planet in our solar system between Earth and the Moon. I think it's just barely. Though. Right? Edit, yeah. Of the 234,555 miles to the Moon, you could fit all planets in with about 5,000 miles to spare. Almost enough space left to fit up small. The Giza pyramids were built when mammoths still roamed the earth. By the time Queen Cleopatra took the throne, the Great Pyramids were already ancient, crumbling ruins. We live closer to the time of Cleopatra than she lived to the building of the Great Pyramids. That Netflix was founded a year before Google. Google was actually something of a latecomer. The first generation of internet companies made people rich, then crashed before very many people even knew what Google was. I think most current internet users don't appreciate just how incredibly bad search was on the internet pre-Google. PageRank changed everything. The Pacific Ocean is so large that there's a point where you could tunnel straight through the earth, and when you come out the other end, you are still in the Pacific Ocean. Also, there is at all times a pair of points on opposite sides of the earth, where both the temperature and air pressure are the same. And this is true for any 2 continuous variables. Explanation for the second point. There is a point in the Pacific Ocean named Point Nemo, which is the furthest point from land. In fact, it is so far from land. The nearest humans are often astronauts in the International Space Station when it passes overhead. The ice orbits the Earth at a maximum of 416 km, while the nearest inhabited landmass to Point Nemo is over 2,700 kilometers away. Polar bears have recently been migrating further south and mating with grizzly bears, creating a hybrid called growler bears. They were separated for so long they took on different phenotypes, but they aren't distant enough to no longer be able to mate and create viable offspring. Radiolab just did an update on that. Turns out all the hybrid bears are all descended from one single female polar bear. There's only a handful of them, and they might just die off. Polar bears are breeding with grizzly bears is how it was originally reported. But it's more like a polar bear did a weird thing and mated with a grizzly. There's some hybrids running around, but they are definitely not the new normal. The 15-20 largest container ships in the world create more pollution than all of the cars in the world. Container ships and cruise liners use some of the nastiest fuel available anywhere. If you have $10 in your pocket and no debts, you have more wealth than 25% of Americans. I was so ready to count myself lucky until I remembered my student debt. Canada has a smaller population than California. Pluto has not gone halfway around the sun since its discovery. The longest domestic flight in the world is in France, Paris to Réunion. A chihuahua is more closely related to a grizzly bear than to a hyena. Fungi are actually more closely related to animals than plants. They breathe in oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide. Saddam Hussein was given the key to the city of Detroit in 1980. John Tyler, born 1790, has 2 living grandchildren as of 2017. Not great-grandchildren, just regular grandkids. I think he was in his 80s when he had a son, and his son was also pretty old when he had these 2. America is 3 people old. The majority of people have an above average number of arms. You can't choke an owl. That sounds like a challenge. Water is a bad conductor of electricity. Pure water absolutely is an insulator. Water is also really good at containing things that are good conductors of electricity, therefore most water, non-pure water, is a good conductor of electricity. The 4 largest US cities, by area, are in Alaska. I'm pretty sure that the largest US city by land area is Jacksonville, FL. But I'm too damn lazy to Google it right now. This is Reddit. Someone will point it out if I'm wrong. It's illegal to hunt whales in Arizona, a completely landlocked state. They're just planning for when California sinks into the sea. Having 6 fingers is actually a dominant trait, but the genes for it are so incredibly rare that pretty much no one has it. More Vietnam vets killed themselves than died in the war. Same with Iraq war veterans : female dragonflies fake being dead in order to stop unwanted male advances. Article. Relatable. Dragonfly. Googleplex is such an absurdity huge number that if you wanted to try and write it out you'd need a tool that could imprint on subatomic particles. Also there aren't enough subatomic particles in the universe to even write the number. Harvard University is over 100 years older than the United States. My high school was founded in 1660. It's also the reason why Yale was founded, because none of the graduates had anywhere to go. Target has one of the best forensics labs in the US. But why? To catch shoplifters initially. But their labs were so damned good at it that they now provide forensic work for law enforcement and others who need such work done. More people die from vending machine than sharks attack. The world's largest desert isn't the Sahara. It's the entire continent of Antarctica. Deserts aren't measured by grains of sand or amount of camels, it's all about precipitation. And Antarctica takes the cake. The roughly 5.5 million square mile continent only gets about 8 inches of rain a year. The guy that made Family Guy was supposed to get on the plane that crashed into one of the towers, but he was late. Marky Mark also claims to have booked on that same plane as well as one of the Backstreet Boys. Side note, I've never once found myself on an airplane with even a single celebrity. How crazy would it be to find yourself on a plane with all ducking 3, then die in a crash? There have been over 2,000 nuclear bomb detonations. There are more trees on Earth than there are in space stars in the Milky Way galaxy. This one's pretty obvious. I have 3 trees just in my yard and almost no stars. The most fatal surgery in history had a 300% mortality rate. How and why? Victim 1, the patient, died from infection. Victim 2, the surgical assistant, got stabbed, died from infection. Victim 3, a bystander, got slashed and died from terror, thinking that an organ had been punctured. A human baby born underwater can live its entire lifetime submerged, without ever surfacing for air. Atlanta is west of Detroit. A ton of people is only about 11 people. Or just your mother. HD video has been around for over 20 years. Only became popular with consumers in the past 5-10 years. In Arizona it's illegal to let your donkey sleep in a bathtub, but it can sit in it. It's also illegal to have more than 3 unrelated women live in a house together, or it's classified as a brothel. If you shuffle a standard deck of cards, it is basically a mathematical impossibility that anyone has ever shuffled a deck of cards into the same order you just have. Vikings did in fact not have any horns on their helmets. The largest air force in the world is the US Air Force. The second largest air force in the world is the US Navy. Cleopatra was born 2,500 years later than the creation of the pyramids, 2686 BC. That places her time closer to Harambe's, 1999, than the time of pyramids. The US Marshals are still looking for the 3 guys who escaped from Alcatraz in 1962. They just disappeared off the face of the earth. And no bodies washed up in San Francisco Bay or anywhere nearby. Despite the official investigation suggesting they drowned before they could reach dry land, the investigation into their escape can't officially end until they reach their 100th birthday. If you cut a hole in a net, it will have less holes. Ice cream sales are correlated with homicides, because heat makes people buy ice cream as well as kill each other. France lends power to Britain so they don't get power surges from boiling the kettle, which happened several times in 2013 after a TV program ended. 27 states have land that is farther north than the southernmost point of Canada, with 13 of them being completely north of the southernmost point of Canada. The most surprising is that California has land north of Canada, but New Jersey does not. Most people have already met psychopaths and sociopaths in their lives, without really knowing which ones are crazy. There is a polar bear jail in Churchill, Manitoba. Polar bears who get too close to the town and or attack townspeople are shot with tranquilizer darts, airlifted, and dropped off at the jail. Ike. They are released into the wild again a few days later. There was no grass in dinosaur times. It just seems so strange because it's so ubiquitous today. Saudi Arabia imports sand. Desert sand is bad for construction. Beach sand is better. So we leave the Sahara alone and destroy beaches around the world. That if you knock your tooth out and put it back in the socket, it will grow roots back and save the tooth. Speaking of sounds, air is a terrible transmitter of sound. Because we hear through the air, we naturally think it's very effective. But gases are terrible at transmitting vibrations. Air gaps are actually a very common and effective tool in soundproofing as well. The best thing for you to do if you are stung by a tarantula hawk wasp is to lie down and scream. Edit. Laying down prevents you from falling over hurting yourself when you're in the throes of pain. And the screaming helps cope with the pain level. Nothing else is really going to help you. Excuse me, a what? It's a wasp that is a hawk for. It hunts tarantulas. Tarantula hawk wasp.